What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 3 favorite loadouts for Rebirth Island. I love Rebirth. In a lot of ways, I think Rebirth is better than Verdansk right now. It just feels better. It's much more fun to play, especially with a good squad. So we're going to talk about my top 3 favorite loadouts for Rebirth Island specifically in this video. Give you my logic for all the attachments and everything. One of the loadouts I've already covered. I covered it in my gameplay video from probably, I don't know, a week and a half ago. I'll link that below if you want to watch it, but it was a 51 kill game between my team, and there were only 36 enemies in the lobby, so it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I'll link that below. As always, if you guys like the content, consider dropping that sub. We're trying to hit 200,000 subscribers by the 1-year channel anniversary, which is, I believe, August 13th. So a little over a month ago. It's an aggressive goal, but you got to set aggressive goals to meet aggressive goals, so we're going to try it, see if we can get there. I think that would be an amazing achievement. So if you like what I'm doing, you like the website, consider dropping that sub. It's usually like 30-40% of the people watching my videos aren't subscribed, so we could literally get there in one video if everybody subscribed that wasn't subscribed. Obviously that's not practical, but just saying we could. But yeah, let's jump into it, and we will talk about my 3 favorite Rebirth Island loadouts. Alright, so in this video I'm not just going to talk about the guns, I'm also going to talk about perks and lethals and tacticals. So I made a video on this a little bit ago, but I just want to cover it again. It was a gameplay video, so I didn't cover the loadout that much, but this is my current absolute favorite loadout to use in Rebirth. There's a few different attachments for the Milano we'll cover, but it's the Milano and the Swiss with Quick Fix Overkill Amped. Quick Fix is great for Rebirth because as soon as you down somebody, your health starts coming back, which is super useful when there's people all over all the time and you always have to react quickly, and there's always going to be another person following up the person you down. So Quick Fix is a great perk for Rebirth specifically. Amped always, obviously, super important for switching weapons quickly. I'd say in this tree, the second best would be either Tracker or Battle Hardened. That way, for Battle Hardened, that makes stuns not as effective on you, and then obviously Tracker, when there's people all around in Rebirth, it's really nice to have Tracker to follow them. So those are both pretty good perks. In Verdansk, it's pretty much always amped. You almost always use amped, but in Rebirth, I think Tracker is probably number 2. And then for lethals, I use throwing knives. This is a super common thing. This is so you can down somebody and finish them immediately without needing to use more ammo. Super useful, especially when, like I've been talking about this whole time, there's people everywhere in Rebirth all the time. There's always people coming for you after you down somebody. So if you can down somebody, finish them immediately and not have to reload, that's a huge plus. And then because people are parachuting in so often on Rebirth and they don't have perks, I think a heartbeat sensor is probably the best tactical. Obviously stuns are OP and can be used. Stuns would be amazing, but I just feel like heartbeat sensor is so good on Rebirth because you can always see the people that are coming in that have respawned after dying. So those are my perks and lethals and tacticals that I use on Rebirth. But the builds for the guns, so the Milano, the reason the Milano I like so much for Rebirth is because it's so good everywhere. It's not the best anywhere. It doesn't have the best TTK. It doesn't have the best TTK at range, but it does have SMG sprint to fire time. It is really accurate. It does have decent TTKs up close, decent TTKs at range, and a super important thing is that it has this 55 round drum and has a massive damage per mag potential. So on Rebirth, I keep saying this, there's always people following up, and having 55 round drum on a weapon that shoots really slow and hits pretty hard means that you can kill 4 people with 1 magazine, and that is huge on Rebirth, especially just because there's always people coming. You always get third partied. You got to be ready for it. And being able to use a 55 round drum and not have to reload is huge. But the reason I like these attachments, so Agency gives you bullet velocity damage range. The reason I don't use the regular suppressor is just because I don't want to hurt my damage range. I already have an SMG. The damage range is already not super long. And the ADS times, because it's an SMG, the ADS times are already really good. So I feel like I can get away with getting the extra damage range, even though it hurts my aim down sight speed. I think the extra damage range and the recoil control are worth it over the sound suppressor. And then I love to hipfire, and Milano is super good hipfire gun. So when you use the Bruiser Grip and the SWAT 5 milliwatt, that gives you awesome hipfire. Great to use as a hipfire weapon. The one downside of the Milano is it doesn't shoot very fast, it has a slow fire rate. So that means that it's not quite as forgiving if you miss any shots, and you'll feel that from time to time. I've died to that many times, and it's an unfortunate characteristic of the gun. There's nothing you can do about it, but it's so good in every other way that I feel like it's worth it. This is still my favorite sniper support weapon right now. And then I always put an optic on it. I like Millstop, I like Cobra, I like Silex Hollow Scout. Some people like the Microflex. I like having a little bit more zoom, so that's why I use the Millstop, Cobra, or the Silex Hollow Scout. I think they're all, for me personally, I like those a lot more than the Microflex, just because of a little bit extra zoom. But this gun's amazing. It's so good for Rebirth. And then the Swiss has that insane 180 damage to the chest at any range. And it also is the bullet velocity almost matches the Kar 98 now. It's within like 10 meters per second. So I mean, you can basically say they're the same. But this is an insanely good loadout. Maximum bullet velocity with the big suppressor and combat recon barrel, 5 milliwatt laser for ADS times. I like fast mag over bruiser grip because I feel like with the airborne elastic wrap, you get enough aiming stability that you don't need the bruiser grip. I feel like this gun already had really good aiming stability. Airborne elastic wrap makes that even better. And then I don't really think you need the bruiser grip for extra stability. I use the default optic. Some people run the 4X instead of like the fast mag. That's an option, but I just like to stick with the default optic, and especially once we get custom reticles, this gun's going to be amazing. It's already amazing. It's going to be even more amazing. Some people run the sound moderator. For me, I always just want max bullet velocity with my snipers. I don't think it's worth running the sound moderator. I think the ADS times are already good enough on this that you don't need to switch the GRU to the sound moderator, but I know some people love it. So I'd say try them both. For you personally, see which one you like more. I always just like to have the best bullet velocity I can, so I always use the GRU / the agency suppressor. All right, loadout number 2 is going to be the XM4 and the PPSH. This is a very, very amazing loadout. They complement each other excellently. So there's a couple different ways you can build the XM4. So this is one option where you use agency suppressor, task force barrel. Again, these are for damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control with the task force barrel. Task force barrel still gives the best recoil control in the XM4. And then Axial Arms 3X is just the best long range optic. And then something that would be unique for this would be the airborne elastic wrap instead of an underbarrel. Most people are probably using underbarrel. Airborne elastics just to bring that ADS time down from using the 60 round mag. I think you can get away with using 45 on this gun. So if you want a really, really accurate XM4, this is one option here where it'll be pretty accurate, have really good damage range, really good bullet velocity, and you get the 60 rounds. So if 60 rounds are really important to you, this is probably the build to go with. The reason we use this airborne elastic instead of an underbarrel is just because the ADS times on this are going to be pretty bad, and a lot of your fights are going to be mid-range on Rebirth specifically. So we want a little bit better ADS times for those fights where you can't use the SMG, but you don't want to be so slow with your main AR that you can't win that fight. So this would be one option with the XM4. Another really good option would be taking off the airborne elastic, putting on the field agent to give you even better recoil. Super, super accurate gun now, and then swap to the 45 round mag. And I've run this a lot, actually. I think you can definitely get away with the 45 round mag on the XM4. It doesn't shoot super fast. It's not super slow, but I do think you can get away with a 45 round mag just fine. So this actually would have a little bit better ADS times than the previous build I showed, but even more stable recoil. The trade-off is you get 15 less bullets. So this is the one I use personally most of the time, but they're both really, really good options. And then to complement this is my favorite PPSH build. PPSH has great TTKs, great mobility. It's a fantastic SMG. The mistake I've made trying to use it a bunch is trying to extend its range out, use it almost as like a sniper support, because it has really attractive TTKs out at range. So I thought it would be good for that kind of role. But I think the recoil is just too much for that. So I think you really need to treat this almost like a close range SMG. Even though it has good TTKs out at range, you just need to view that as a benefit and treat it like a close range SMG. So with that in mind, again, I like hipfire, so I use the 5 milliwatt laser sight. GRU suppressor, damage range, and bullet velocity. Again, it's an SMG, so it has good ADS time, so I'm not too worried about that. Microflex LED. They made the irons better on this thing, but I still think it needs an optic personally. I love the optic on this. 71 round drum mag. This is pretty huge. This is great for Rebirth. This is one thing that obviously will slow your ADS time down a bunch. The 71 round drum plus the GRU suppressor plus the 5 milliwatt is going to make you have pretty bad ADS times, but they're still usable. This is still my favorite build for the gun. Like I said, it's still usable as an SMG for sure, and because you're using it up super close, you can start firing before you fully ADS, and you have good hip fire, so you're going to land a lot of those shots. So it still works really well. CQB stock, this is something people probably think is pretty weird. Because this gun has an open bolt delay, I like to use the CQB stock just because I need to get that sprint to fire time down, because your sprint to fire plus your open bolt delay is what your actual sprint to fire time is. So because this has an open bolt delay when there's a lot of other SMGs that don't, I like to bring my sprint to fire time down so the time from when I pull the trigger to when I can shoot is still similar to another SMG that has no open bolt delay. So that's kind of the logic there. If you wanted to speed the ADS time up in this, I think the 71 round drum is worth using. So I would switch it to not being a hip fire build and just take that off and put on airborne elastic, or serpent wrap if you don't want to hurt your movement speed. Serpent wrap might be a better option for an SMG, just because you don't want to hurt your movement speed at all. But this would be a great SMG here for Rebirth. Just make sure you're using it up close. You're not trying to use it at like 30 meters, because it's not accurate enough for that. All right, lastly, we're going to talk about the Cold War AK and the Cold War MP5, as well as the Modern Warfare MP5 and the Nailgun. So the reason I choose the Cold War AK for this is because it just has amazing TTKs all around. It's a little harder to control, but it has great TTKs. It's going to be really accurate up close. This is going to be really good anywhere between 15 and 45 meters. This is going to be an excellent gun, excellent build. And the reason I've built it this way is so it's more effective up close, a little faster ADS times than using the Spetsnaz barrel, just because the Liberator doesn't have the ADS penalty. And because we're using something that's only effective up close, one of the two MP5s or the Nailgun, we need this to be good up close as well as good at mid-range to long range. So we have to kind of build it balanced, almost like a sniper support here. So the logic here again: grease suppressor, damage velocity, damage range, and bullet velocity. Liberator barrel for vertical recoil control, and I showed in one of my tests that I think this is the best barrel for the AK right now. Plus, it gives you good bullet velocity. You could potentially use the takedown barrel if you're okay with the horizontal or the bullet velocity, because you're fighting up closer on Rebirth Island. You might want to extend that damage range instead of extending or increasing the bullet velocity. That's another really good option. Either one of these barrels would be fantastic for this build. I personally tend to like bullet velocity. It just feels like I can hit my shots easier, and the AK has so much vertical recoil that I really like to minimize that with the Liberator barrel, but takedown is a good option. Spetsnaz grip, again, AK has really bad recoil, so we want to help with that if we can. So this has vertical and horizontal recoil control. 45 round mag, you don't need to use the 60 just because this thing shoots so slow and hits so hard that 45 is enough. Because we can use the 45, both we get the anime waifu and we get no ADS penalties, which is really nice. And then for the optic, I like to use either the Silix Hollow Scout, Axial 3X, or the Millstop. I think they're all three really good. Just try them all, see which one you like the most. I tend to like the Axial 3X or the Millstop the most. For some reason, I don't love the Silix on the AK, but some people do. So give it a try. But yeah, that's why I built this way. And then what we're putting with that is, like I said, either the Modern Warfare MP5, the Cold War MP5, or the Nailgun, which are all like the fastest killing guns up close. Besides the AS Val, of course. But the AS Val is just kind of a niche gun and doesn't really have enough ammo to be used in Rebirth, especially when there's people coming at you nonstop. It is similar to the Nailgun, though, in that regard, so it would be a viable option. But anyway, the build for the MP5, again, I like to hipfire, so I built this for movement speed and hipfire. So agency suppressor gives you bullet velocity, damage range, vertical recoil control, which the Cold War MP5 has tons of vertical recoil, so it's really important that we have something that helps with that a little bit. Bruiser grip for movement speed and hipfire, very nice. Helps you 3.5% movement speed, which is also 3.5% sprint speed. It's already a fast gun, so that makes it even better. Quick note: if you use these blueprints without the barrel, you get a special iron sight, which gives you a better sight picture. So make sure you don't use the barrel, because the barrel will take that off. 50 round drum, no brainer. A 50 round fast mag doesn't really change reload times that much, and it's going to slow your ADS times down a ton. So we just want 50 bullets with the minimum ADS penalty, which is the drum. 5 milliwatt laser for hipfire. Again, I love hipfire. And then for the last attachment, I really think one of the two first stocks is probably the best option. So aim blocking movement speed. This makes you move around a lot faster when you're ADS'd. So that's a big benefit. It's not going to be as crazy as the Raider or the SAS combat stock. And the reason I still recommend these is because I don't want to kill hipfire. Both of these two stocks absolutely destroy the hipfire of the gun. So I would recommend either the tactical or the collapse stock. Collapse stock, again, will make you have really good sprint to fire times, even better than the default SMG sprint to fire times. So it's a great option there. But either one of these, I personally probably would go with tactical stock, because we have nothing on here hurting sprint to fire time. So you already have really good sprint to fire times. So I think this is probably the build I would use. Then if you're going to run a Modern Warfare MP5, which is another great option, which has fantastic TTKs as well, my recommendation would be 45 round mag. We're going to run this really super up close with a hipfire build, basically. So we're going to use monolithic integral suppressor, FTAC collapsible, 5 milliwatt laser, 45 round mag, and maybe it might be worth, because there's so much action in Rebirth all the time. This is a full hipfire build for the Modern Warfare MP5. It might be worth swapping out the underbarrel. So the Merc foregrip gives you hipfire and recoil control, which is really nice, but it also slows you down a bunch. It doesn't even say it hurts your movement speed, but besides just aimed walking movement speed and ADS time, it also hurts your movement speed by quite a bit. So personally, I would probably remove that and use sleight of hand instead. This would probably be my go-to build for the Modern Warfare MP5. This would be, even though it has no recoil attachments, it's still going to have better recoil than the Cold War MP5, so it's still going to be a little bit better at range. Overall, it's a trade-off. Modern Warfare MP5 kills a little bit slower, but it's easier to control. Cold War MP5 is just shreds people, has a bigger magazine, bigger damage per mag, but it's really hard to control when you ADS with it. And then obviously, the build for the Nailgun is relatively simple. You just use the Nailgun, and then you're good to go. Nailgun's like an AS Val on steroids. It kills faster, but has less damage range, and only has 20 rounds. But really, I've showed this before on my Twitter page, that the damage per mag of the Nailgun is actually relatively close to the Mac 10 with a 53 round drum, which is hilarious, just because it hits so hard. But with that 39% reduction to damage range, you really have to treat it almost like a shotgun now. So you have to get up in people's faces. So that's why I've kind of fit it in this category with the two MP5s with an all-round AK-47. All right, everybody. I hope you found this video useful and informative and helpful. These are my favorite loadouts. I think they're fantastic. Obviously, I didn't mention the FARA. The FARA is very good. It's just like the XM4. I just think the XM4 is a little bit better for Rebirth. Has a better reload time, better ADS times, better TTKs. It's similar in terms of how to control now. Maybe a little bit harder to control than the FARA still after the recoil changes, but they're very similar. I think the XM4 is better for Rebirth, so that's why I didn't talk about the FARA. Snipers are so good. I want to mention something. There is spawn protection in Rebirth Island, where you can't damage somebody if you hit them anywhere on the body. You can damage them, but it does like 1/10 the damage it normally would, so you can almost not kill people out of the air unless you get headshots. I don't know how many people know this, but if you get a headshot, it counts as full damage. So I snipe people out of the air all the time with the Swiss. That's why I love using the sniper on Rebirth so much. It's just obnoxiously fun because people just float when they're trying to decide where they're going to go. You just scope in, get a headshot real fast, and you get free kills out of the air. It's just really, really fun to do. But yeah, I hope you guys found the video informative and useful and enjoyable. I will see you guys on the next one. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, maybe in a week. Who knows? But I'll see you in the next one.